Hey guys, I'm going to start a series in 1 Corinthians, and we're going to start at chapter 12 and go through chapter 14. And in chapter 12, Paul talks about two things. He talks about spiritual gifts and one body with many members. And so I want you to pay attention to why he puts these two right beside each other, why he goes into talking about one body with many members. And as soon as I said spiritual gifts, I bet some of you were like, huh? I was the same way at one point. Spiritual gifts, I've never really been taught about spiritual gifts. Well, you're not the only one. See, Paul is addressing a church in Corinth at this time who are not disciples, or not a bunch of religious nuts. They've got a bunch of stuff wrong with them, as you may have known. They're Christians. They're just normal people at church that have messed up a lot. And Paul's trying to get to them and say, look, you guys have some gifts that God has given you that you may not be exercising. Okay? Let's just pick up in verse 1. Now concerning spiritual gifts, brothers, I do not want you to be uninformed. These people were uninformed. Like I just said, they were uninformed about what they have. And Paul's getting ready to tell them what spiritual gifts there are. Starting in verse 8. For to one is given through the Spirit the utterance of wisdom, and to another the utterance of knowledge by the same Spirit, to another faith by the same Spirit. We have gifts of wisdom, of knowledge, and God gives us a gift of faith. Let me keep going. To another gifts of healing by one Spirit, to another the working of miracles, to another prophecy, to another the ability to distinguish between spirits, to another various kinds of tongues, to another the interpretation of tongues. Paul is listing all these gifts, and then look what he talks about here in a second. He says, now there's one body with many members. In verse 12, for just as one body is one and has many members, and all the members of one body, though many, are one body, so it is with Christ. He says, you guys have all these gifts, and I've given you all these gifts so you can be one body. Why? We're getting ready to look into that. He starts in verse 16. He says, and if the ear should say, because I'm not an eye, I don't belong to the body, that would make it any less a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? But as it is, God arranged the members in the body, each one of them as He chose. If all were a single member, where would the body be? As it is, there's many parts, yet one body. This is what's happening, guys. Here's all these people with different spiritual gifts that are all supposed to come together. But what do we do today in America? We say, well, I believe in good preaching and good teaching, which is a gift by God. We're getting ready to see that later on in chapter 12. But this guy believes in speaking in tongues. But our church doctrine says that we don't believe in speaking in tongues. So you go over there to that Pentecostal church, and we're going to stay here at this Baptist church, and we're just going to be good teachers, and you guys are just going to be good speaking in tonguers, or whatever you call that. Or in all these different gifts applied, there might be someone that can prophesy. But we don't believe in that, so we kick them out. Or we say, well, we believe this way, so we're going to go to this church. And then we slap a denomination on it. Guys, this is exactly what Paul is talking about here. He says, you can't say, because I'm an ear, I don't need you anymore, eye. And see what happens, that's exactly what we're saying. And what happens is when people walk into church, they're just seeing the eyeball of God. Or they're just seeing the ear of Christ. They're not seeing the whole body. He's saying you guys all have these different gifts, but you're one body. So when people come into church, they should see prophets. They should see people that have this gift of healing, the working of miracles, people speaking in tongues. And I know there's order that comes with this, guys, and this isn't just given to the disciples. People will argue this. Paul is writing this to Christians that are in a church, and these Christians have made mistakes. We all have these gifts, guys, and we're supposed to bring them together to be one body, so when people come in, they see the full body of Christ. Not just an ear. But right now, when we walk into churches, all we see is just the ear of Christ, or the eye. And all those people who believe this way, or if we believe in this gift but not this one, we're just saying, we don't need you, you go over there. And this is why people don't see Christ in our churches. And this is exactly what Paul talks about. It's called division. And this is what Paul says about division. But God has so composed the body, giving greater honor to the part that lacked it, that there may be no division in the body, but that the members may have the same care for one another. No division. Guys, take this for what it means. Take this as a child. Don't read this and ask God to teach you and instruct you in this. Don't take my word for it or your pastor's word for it. Read what this says and just take it for what it is. And let's be the body of Christ and not just an eye or an ear. Thanks, guys.